Alrighty guys, welcome to part 2 of the fast test review. We're going to be going over triangles and quadrilaterals, so let's get into it. Alright, starting off, we're going to talk about the types of triangles and how we can identify them by the side lengths and the angles that they have. So, when you're taking your test, you're going to have to tell what kind of triangle it is by giving whether it's equilateral, isosceles, or scalene. So you have to tell how many sides are equal. If there are all equal sides in a triangle, it's equilateral. If two sides of the triangle are equal, any two sides, then it's called isosceles. And if every side is different, none of them are the same, it's called a scalene triangle. Now once you know what type of triangle it is by how many sides are the same, then you also have to tell what kind of angles the triangle has. So if every angle is the same, we call it an equilateral triangle. So an equilateral triangle is the same number of sides and the same number of angles, the same degree of angles. All right, then next we have an acute triangle. In an acute triangle, every single angle is less than 90 degrees. So this is a 90-degree angle, and if it's less than that, even just a little bit, this is acute. But if we have an angle that's bigger than this 90 degrees, so it goes wider like this, then this is called an obtuse angle. Obtuse angle. So we have three types of main angles. Acute, all of them are less than 90 degrees. A right triangle, where exactly one angle is 90 degrees. And then we have an obtuse angle, where exactly one angle is bigger than 90 degrees. All the other angles are going to be acute, but if just one of them is bigger than 90 degrees, it's obtuse. For a right triangle, the other two angles are going to be acute, but if just one of the angles is 90 degrees, it's a right triangle. And for an acute triangle, every angle is less than 90 degrees. All right, now let's see what kind of questions they can ask with this. All right, for these exercises A through I, it says identify each triangle based on angles. So only the angle. Is it acute? Is it obtuse? Or is it right? So remember, we have to just look and see if there is one obtuse angle, then the triangle is obtuse. If there is one right angle, then it's right. If they're all acute, then it's an acute triangle. So let's look at these angles. So remember, this is a right angle. If we have a bigger than right, it's obtuse. And if we have less than right, it's acute. So let's look at each angle. So this angle is less than 90, so it's acute. This is less than 90 and it's acute. But if I look at this right angle here, this is bigger than right angle. So this is going to be obtuse. Now here, let's draw a right angle for each of them. Here we have an acute triangle, because a right angle would be this. This is acute, and this is acute, so we have an acute triangle. Here we have an acute angle, acute, and this perfectly right. So one right angle makes it a right triangle. Once again, here we have a right angle, so it's going to be a right triangle. Then we look at this one, it's acute, 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 so we have an acute triangle. This is acute, but looking at this angle, we see it's much bigger than a right angle. So this is going to be obtuse. Finally, G, last row, acute, 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 makes an acute triangle. Acute, acute, and obtuse makes an obtuse triangle. And then I's over here. And this is going to be acute, acute, right, one right angle, gives us a right triangle. All right, next we're going to judge it by its angles and its side lengths. All right, for these slides, we have 9 questions, and we're going to identify the type of triangle each of these is. Remember, when we want the type, that means that we're going to classify it by the number of sides that are equal, number of equal sides, and the angles it has. So for example, question 1, we have 3 side lengths. One side length is A, one is B, and one is C. All those are different letters, so they represent different numbers. So every side is different. And what kind of triangle has all different sides? That is a scalene. Then we look at the angles. I see I have an acute angle here, an acute angle here, and one right angle. So this is going to be a scalene right. Or sometimes you'll see it as a right scalene. All right, next we see a right angle right away, so we know it's going to be right. And then we see that all 3 angles, all 3 side lengths are different, except for these 2. These are both A, so that means 2 side lengths are the same. And when 2 side lengths are the same, we call that isosceles. Triangle 3, let's look at the angles. This is acute, and this is acute, so it's going to be acute. And then we see B and B and A. So it has 2 sides that are the same, and when 2 sides are the same, that's an isosceles. If we look at this one, we see that all side lengths are the same, S, S, and S, and that makes this equilateral. Remember, equilateral means all angles are the same and acute, and all side lengths are the same. We'll look at 5. Well, here's a right angle, so this is going to be acute, acute, and acute. So it's going to be an acute, and all side lengths are A, B, and C different. So acute scalene. Next, we look at angle, and that's a right angle, so this is going to be obtuse. And A, B, and C are all different, so it's going to be scalene again. Here we have B and B, which are the same, and all of these are acute, so this is going to be acute isosceles. Then we have acute angle, acute, acute, another acute scalene, because no sides are the same. And then finally we have this guy, and this is going to be an obtuse angle, an acute and acute. So we have an obtuse scalene. All right, so that's it for triangles. Now we're going to into types of quadrilaterals. Now, a lot of you guys had trouble with this one, but it's mainly just remembering the definitions and how they're different and similar to each other. So there are 6 types of quadrilaterals you're going to have to know for the exam. And remember, a quadrilateral is just any shape with 4 sides. If any shape has 4 sides to it, it's a quadrilateral. Simple as that. So if any shape has 3 sides, it's a triangle. If it has 4 sides, it's a quadrilateral. So the first type of quadrilateral is the square. A very famous quadrilateral. So it has 4 equal sides, since it's a quadrilateral. Opposite sides, so this side and this side are opposite, and they're parallel, which means that they move on forever and don't touch. And these sides are opposite, and they're parallel. And it contains 4 90-degree angles. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the brother to the square is the rectangle. And it's almost identical to a square in every way except for one. So it also has 4 right angles. It also has 2 opposite parallel sides. However, the opposite sides are equal to each other, but they're not all equal to each other. So it has 2 pairs of opposite sides, but not all 4 sides are equal. So that's the difference between a square and a rectangle. Then next we have the trapezoid, which is different in a lot of ways. So a trapezoid doesn't have to have any sides equal. It can have two sides that are equal. These two sides can be equal. And opposite sides are going to be parallel. And we know that one side is going to be parallel and one side is not going to be parallel. So these sides are not parallel and the top and bottom sides are parallel. That's how you know it's going to be a trapezoid. So that's what makes a trapezoid special. It only has one pair of parallel sides that are opposite. All right, now we have our three last definitions for quadrilaterals. And the first one is a parallelogram. So a parallelogram isn't exactly one type of shape. A parallelogram is any shape that has two pairs of parallel sides. So if we looked at the first three definitions for parallelogram, so a parallelogram is any quadrilateral that has two pairs of opposite parallel sides. So we know that a square fits that definition, a rectangle fits that definition, but a trapezoid, remember we said only one of the opposite sides are parallel, and the other one is not parallel. So a trapezoid is not a parallelogram. But then we get into the rhombus. And the rhombus is a quadrilateral that is a parallelogram. All four sides are equal, but it has no 90-degree angles. So a rhombus is another type of parallelogram where both of the opposite sides are parallel. All the sides are equal, so it sounds just like a square, except none of the angles are going to be 90 degrees. We have two acute and two obtuse angles, so none of the angles are right. Otherwise, it's just like a square. All right, then we have our kite, which is special. So a trapezoid only has one pair of opposite parallel sides, but a kite has no parallel sides. So if a shape has four sides, none of the sides are parallel, it's a kite right away. And a kite is special because the adjacent angles, the ones that touch each other, the adjacent sides, these touch, right? Those are the equal. And then these sides touch each other, and they're equal. So a kite has two equal sides that are different in length from each other, but the same to one another, and no parallel sides. So trapezoid, one opposite parallel side. Kite, zero opposite parallel sides. So that's it. Otherwise, you can remember, you know the difference between a square and a rectangle, and a rhombus is just a square with no 90-degree angles. So if you can remember these properties, you'll be able to do very well on the test. All right, so this is the facts about quadrilaterals and vocabulary about quadrilaterals that you need to know. So a quadrilateral is a shape with four sides. Parallel means lines that are the same distance apart and they will never intersect. And to intersect means to touch. So when this line crosses this line, that's an intersection. That's when they touch. But two lines that are parallel will go on forever and ever and ever, but they will never cross each other, intersect, and they'll never touch. So perpendicular lines are like these two lines. They're lines that form a right 90-degree angle. And congruent means they have the same side lengths and angles. This one isn't too important for 5th grade though. All right, so let's look at what we know about quadrilaterals. So a quadrilateral is a four-sided polygon. All right, so this is a special type of quadrilateral, but we're going to get there next. All right, what shape is this? So opposite sides are parallel and equal. Well, I know that this is going to be a square. Opposite sides are parallel and they're all equal. However, square all the sides angles are 90 degrees, but these are not 90 degrees. So this is going to be a rhombus. Just like a square, but no 90-degree angles. All right, so what kind of shape has two pairs of equal length adjacent sides, but the opposite sides are not parallel? So it has no parallel sides. If you see a shape with no parallel sides and four sides, it's a kite. Now let's look at this shape. So this has exactly one pair of parallel sides. So if I look at the top and the bottom, I can see that these are parallel lines. But if I look at the left and right, this and this are not parallel. So if there's only one pair of parallel sides, it's a trapezoid. So if you see a quadrilateral with one pair of parallel sides, it's a trapezoid. If it has no parallel sides, it's a kite. Then obviously we have our rectangle here, which is a parallelogram with four right angles. And then we have our rhombus, which is a parallelogram with four equal sides, but no right angles. And then we have our square, which is a parallelogram with four equal sides and four right angles. So if you can know this about those 5 shapes, then you have everything you need to answer every question on that test. All right, now we have a practice test that we can use to put everything we learned together. So question 1 says, I am a polygon with 4 sides. What am I? Well, it could be a rhombus, it could be a trapezoid, it could be a lot of different shapes, kite. So when it's that vague and it just has 4 sides, that means we're looking for a quadrilateral of some sort. Question 2, I am a polygon with 2 pairs of parallel sides and 4 right angles. What am I? So here we see triangle. Well, a triangle only has 3 sides. So it can't have 4 right angles because it only has 3. A rhombus. I am a polygon with 2 pairs of parallel sides and 4 right angles. Well, a rhombus famously has opposite parallel sides, all equal, but no right angles, 0. So it can't be a rhombus. And a trapezoid only has 1 pair of parallel sides. So it can't be a trapezoid. So here we're looking at a rectangle. 3 says, I am a polygon with 2 pairs of parallel sides, 4 right angles, and all 4 sides are equal. Well, the only shape that has 4 equal sides are a rhombus and a square. And the only difference between them is that the square has 4 right angles while the rhombus does not. So this must be a square. Question 4. Colton drew a parallelogram with 4 sides of equal length and 2 pairs of equal angles. What shape did he draw? All right, so remember, a parallelogram could be a square, a rectangle, or a rhombus. But we know that the square and the rectangle, all 4 angles are right angles. But if it only has 2 pairs of equal angles and not all 4 are equal, then it has to be, then it can't be, let's see, Colton drew a parallelogram with 4 sides of equal length. All right, so this is square, but it says 2 pairs of equal angles. This should actually be a rhombus. This is wrong, because a rhombus looks like this. 4 sides of equal length, and this angle equals this angle, and this angle equals this angle, but they're different. The square has all 4 same, so this should actually be a rhombus. All right, question 5. What would this triangle be classified on based on its sides? And let's do the angles too. So let's look at this first angle. It's acute. Angle C is acute, and B That is obtuse. So this is going to be an obtuse triangle. And we look, every side length is different. So that's going to be scalene. So this is going to be an obtuse scalene triangle. All right, let's move on to the next part, part 3, coming up.